Tim Rowland recently wrote an editorial suggesting that there's a feud within the Republican Party, and he called out several issues, including the potential appointment of Woody Spong. Neal Parrott wrote a rebuttal of sorts, indicating all of the good things that Republicans and the Central Committee are doing. So, Ken, what's your take on the state of the Republican Party right here in Washington County?
So if you take a jigsaw puzzle, fresh out of a box, shake it up, dump it on the table.
Yeah.
That's probably a pretty good analogy for the state of the party right now. Now, I am going to say Spong is a genius.
Yeah.
Okay, Spong is an absolute genius because something we've always had a problem with in Washington County is local residents not taking an interest in politics. He is making them take an interest in politics now.
For good,
Maybe
for
not for the
better.
right reasons.
For better. I mean, we have this recent development where Tim Rowland wrote this really interesting article in the Herald Mail, and I when Tim sits on the panel, it's always fun. Tim has a great sense of humor, and that shines through in his columns. But he basically laid out the schism between the Republican Party and Washington County. So, look, guys, you have the more kind of hands-off but in tune with politics, the business side, where they really want to get things done.
Yep.
They understand economics. They're not rebel rousers. They're the behind-the-scenes types that are usually the ones who are very involved with community organizations, and they sort of go quietly about their business and say, hey, we're Republicans, and they always show up to the polls, I should mention. But then we have this Tea Party faction that is led by Terry Baker, Woody Spong, Neal Parrott is the ringleader. I mean, what a total disaster Neal Parrott is. And I believe that, that's my opinion, because what has he accomplished on behalf of Washington County? And I should also mention that in 2018, you can bet your bottom dollar Neal Parrott is going to go after Andy Serafini and do the same thing that Neal Parrott's best friend down in Frederick County, Michael Huff, did, and that is paint Andy Serafini as a liberal Republican, which, of course, he isn't, Colin.
Yes. Well, you know, if anybody has any doubt about whether there's a rift, we have Exhibit A right here. We have Ryan, who does his commando raids into meetings and things and comes out with all this information.
The Republicans, the Neal Parrott Republicans, the Woody Spong, Terry Baker, they do not like me. They detest me. But you know what?
Yeah, but
I don't care.
Well,
Guys,
but here's the problem, and I think there is, and I think you phrase it very well in saying that it's a schism that's occurring within the Republican Party. There is an identity crisis currently, and it's been something that's been going on for about 20 or 30 years even, because you have, and you know, we've had the neocons, which became the Tea Partiers eventually, and you have this whole radical right. The reality of the matter is politics is always centrist, right? Yeah. Things get done when people sit down together. They have different views.
Between the 45 and 55-yard
right.
lines.
And they can agree. You know, eventually not everybody's happy. That's a compromise. A compromise is not when somebody comes out getting everything that they want, but they're willing to be flexible enough to get stuff done.
Well, I want to note in the article that Neal Parrott wrote as sort of a rebuttal to Tim Rowland, he talked about Second Amendment rights, and he said, and as a staunch Second Amendment supporter as I am, what the hell is this guy doing with Second Amendment rights? I mean,
what does it have to do with anything?
Well,
really?
what is I mean, Ken, what?
I mean, you know,
what does that mean?
I'm kind of at a loss for words, honestly.
No, I'm interested to read in his letter. You know, I was thinking of writing a letter to the editor about this particular piece, but you know, I was thinking, well, you know, he says poor Tim Rowland is trying to attribute what's happening nationally with the Republicans here. Well, this is a microcosm of America, Neal.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing happens here. And he admits, obviously here, there is a big mess on the national level, is what he's saying, that he admits it here, you know, that about the division. But it exists here too.
Well, let me ask
and
you.
he's a big cause of
You know,
that.
I don't always agree with Tim Rowland, but you know, I will definitely agree with him on that.
Yeah, I think most people would.
So we all saw what happened in the last few days that's transpired with Woody Spong. And he's been the ringleader really against the Board of Education. And Neal Parrott and some of the other members of the delegation have piled on to say that the Board of Education is fiscally irresponsible. And Woody has this beef with the Board of Education. And I mean, it comes down to it. When you look at the appointment itself, it was done back last Easter. It was rushed. He wasn't vetted. And I mean, they had their hand-picked selection. They didn't even interview all the candidates that applied for the county commissioner job. And moreover, we ended up with Woody Spong, who now has what, 3 strikes against him?
Yeah, and
he's
then
getting
he's got
pretty
his
close
friend Terry Baker talking about offing the president
Oh
of
my
the United
gosh.
States.
You know,
I mean, you've
now-
got Woody
now,
Spong doing this.
I am going to say,
I mean, come on.
I think that Terry had a very poor choice of words
It's a very poor choice of words from a
Very poor choice
public
of words.
official.
from a public official.
Yes,
yes
as somebody who
absolutely.
is in that,
Oh.
it is totally
Right.
irresponsible. He's not a private citizen here.
No.
Right,
And Woody Spong, he's
same
got to
with
be the
Spong.
stupidest person not to have learned from Donna Brightman thing.
Um,
That post was put up that we're talking about on the 17th, the day
now,
before Martin
now we have to
Luther
say
King
we have to
Day.
say alleged Donna Brightman thing because that
well,
was never
I think
fully
pretty
proven.
much
Well, in
people.
fairness, yeah.
He's admitted he may not have used the exact word, but
Well, you know, you have
We
Woody
know, so.
now putting up a post that about, it was a picture of the Little Rascals buckwheat, and
Yeah.
then said he changed his name to Kareem of Wheat, and then
Yeah.
he hopes he's not a serial killer. I mean, guys, it's
Yeah.
not funny.
I would love
Yeah.
to have him
it's-
go to the Martin Luther King event at Robert Johnson Community Center and show that to Karen Cook, who
Yeah.
runs that center. And I'll bet you anything, he would never think of doing
Well,
that.
I don't think he's. I mean,
Yeah.
let me get out on the table. I don't.
He's
think
not racist.
He's not a racist.
No.
I just think that
He's not
naive,
racist. He's
extremely-
not
Extremely poor
sexist.
judgment. when it
Yeah,
comes to
Yeah.
publishing
discernment
things.
is everything in public office, and he has to understand that he represents all people, and everything that you post on social media. Look, I'm a prime example. Everything that you post on,
Yes,
everything
yes,
you-
Brian.
everything
Yes,
you
you are
post
prime
on
examples.
social
Yeah.
media,
We'll come back to
Was
haunt
gonna
you.
even
back to
in
haunt you.
2005, will come back to bite you in the rear end.
If
and
you're going to be a public official,
you're
it
gonna be a-
certainly will be. And this man is supposed to be representing
get confirmed?
all these people. I would hope not.
I mean, Jamie Raskin says today in the Baltimore Sun that this nominee or this nomination
Yeah.
has some explaining to do.
Well, you know,
Yeah.
you had Sarah Feeney and Edwards, our two senators that represent this county,
Good guys too.
who did not want to touch this, quite obviously, and talk about rifts, and they don't want to be associated with us. Let the committee do their work.
Right. I really don't blame him
So
for
they're
that.
not
because
defending. I'm not
it's-
saying
yeah.
I don't blame
I don't blame
them.
him for that at
I'm
all.
just using it
But
again
look,
as a,
but on
an
the-
example of what is
On the
happening
flip
here.
side, this is a conservative county. It's a fiscally conservative county. The Board of County Commissioners has, they have their, I mean, was it a AA, AAA bond rating?
I don't
It's
recall.
double A because it had been less than
This
that.
county is consistently one of the most fiscally responsible counties, and I know that Terry Baker likes to take credit for that. We have tremendous solar energy down at the prison.
40 West
Yeah,
Lake.
Right.
yeah,
Shore.
but
There's
still-
a lot of
yeah.
good things that Republicans have done too.
Yeah, but 20 years after their almost total rule here, where have we gotten in terms of economically in this county?
I look at Brett
It
Wilson.
doesn't work too well.
I look at
think.
Delegate Brett Wilson in the city of Hagerstown and what he's doing on some criminal justice reform issues. I think he's the future of the party.
Well, we'll see if that pans out. He's just very new. I'm talking about the last 20 years.
no, that's fair. I mean, but I think personally,
fair.
Brett's
This is 2
doing great.
decades.
Well,
of-
so interestingly
Nothing to
enough,
show
I
for it.
actually looked at the Maryland Labor website.
Mm-hmm.
The past 3 years, we have lost about 1% of jobs. But before that, we were actually steadily growing the jobs, not at the same rate as the state.
No, I mean, the state's
but
far
we were actually
outperforming
steadily growing
here.
jobs. But this
Yeah.
past 3 years has been terrible for us.
Well, and I think the economic downturn, of course, it radiates out from the centers of power. So our downturn came later than
Right.
other places. I think we're still dealing with the after effects of that. I mean, the reality of the matter is, and I think kind of going back to the topic that we had, we are a microcosm of the nation. I think that there is a contest that's occurring for the ideals of both parties, not just the Republican parties. I think
Yeah.
they both are having an identity crisis at the
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah, and it's definitely going to be a very interesting election year.
And I think
Absolutely.
I think it's and leading up to 2018, I think you're going to see it even more. split.
2018 is going to be even more interesting.
It's going to be messy. But anyway, next up on the
Messy
flip
already.
Yeah. Next up on the flip side, Hagerstown has seen more than its share of crime in the past few months. We will discuss the crime rate and the reasons in 3 minutes.